All right. Well, welcome. We're very privileged today to have Luis Fraga as our first speaker this morning. So Luis is Associate Vice Provost for Faculty Advancement, Russell Stark University Professor, Director of Diversity Research Institute, and Professor of Political Science at the University of Washington. He works directly with the provost, deans, and department chairs to develop strategies of outreach, assessment, recruitment, and retention to build an inclusive faculty at the University of Washington. He's authored and co-authored 5 books, including Latinos in the New Millennium, an almanac of opinion, behavior, and policy preferences, and Latino Lives in America, Making It Home. He has also published extensively in journals and edited volumes. In 2011, the President Barack Obama appointed him to the President's Advisory Commission on Educational Excellence for Hispanics. He was also named one of the 100 most influential Hispanics by Hispanic Business Magazine. The Fulcrum Foundation has named him as one of the champions of Catholic education in 2012. He is currently working on another co-authored book entitled Invisible No More, Latino Identities in American Politics. So he's a wonderful speaker, and I think will share his perspectives, and we can think about them in their relationship to health as well. So welcome, Luis.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay with the microphone? I want to share with you this morning some experiences and ideas that I have based upon my administrative responsibilities to try to help the University of Washington do what I now term build a more inclusive faculty. How it is that an institution as complex and as entrenched and as successful as the University of Washington is, how is it that this institution can be influenced to try to get it to understand that its own future success is intimately tied to building a more inclusive faculty, to increasing faculty diversity. And the way I want to do that is by focusing on research and use then as an example the sort of research that you are focused on here in this meeting, health-related research to Latinos and Latinas as a way of demonstrating how it is that I think this fits into a much larger, more effective strategy that all institutions of higher education have to pursue in the United States today if they're going to be successful, if they're going to be relevant, if they're going to be meaningful, both with regards to the changing demographics of our country and with regards to their traditional understandings of what academic excellence is. So, I want to start out with, I don't know if there's a laser pointer on here. There is there? Which one is, oh, it's the middle one.
Maybe not. There's another laser pointer up there.
This one? Oh, it's another one?
There, yeah.
Oh, maybe it's this one. Oh, I don't know if I can do 2 hands. It's going to be hard. And I'll try to keep it to time here. Oh, here we go. I'm right-handed, left-handed. Anyway, every time when you're asked to give a talk, sometimes you have a microphone in the hand. Well, I'm usually have a remote clicker, so I get like all awkward and fall and whatnot. I want to show you that in this vision, a statement of vision and values of the University of Washington, it's very clear that diversity is important to the institution. In fact, it's listed as one of the 6 major values of the institution. Now, we're not naive in this room, and we know that every institution of higher education today talks about diversity and the importance of diversity. But the reason I point it out here, and I'll try to build on this as my major message to you this morning, the reason I point it out here is to say diversity, according to the institution, is just as important as integrity, as excellence, as collaboration, as innovation, and as respect. The institution has opened up a door for us to be able to argue, to be able to make a claim that diversity is not just something else that the institution does when it has time, when it has extra resources, when it wants to, but rather it's a fundamental part of how the institution understands itself and its own vision of itself as an institution. Well, I think it provides us an opportunity to identify what I'll call two primary fundamental principles that help us understand how important building a more inclusive faculty grounded in research is for institutions of higher education. I want to use this as an example, and I'm taking these ideas from my own experiences of serving in this administrative role now for 7 years. When I was hired by the University of Washington to help it build a more inclusive faculty, this was a new position. Very briefly, you may all recall that the University of Washington was one of the first universities to have a major student protest in 1968. African American, Latino, Asian American, Native American students hung out of the president's window on the third floor of Gerberding Hall in 1968. Right down the hall from where my office is. I'm not in the president's office, but across the hall, from where across the, I guess the floor, if you will, from where the president's office is. And the University of Washington established soon after an Office of Minority Affairs and Diversity. It was one of the first in the country to kind of validate this student effort. What were the students asking for? Same thing students ask for today. Better financial aid, more access to the institution, a more diverse curriculum that represents the life experiences of a broader range of students than traditionally was the case, a more diverse faculty they asked for as well. Well, in establishing that Office of Minority Affairs, as many universities did at that time, what the university decided to do was to focus primarily on students. So this Office of Minority Affairs was responsible for student counseling, particularly for first-generation students and students from historically underrepresented communities, focus on trying to do greater outreach for recruitment for undergraduate admissions, focus on trying to make sure that our students maximize their financial aid, and there was no emphasis on curriculum, no emphasis on faculty whatsoever. In 1997, so how many years is that? 1968, 1997, kind of good for universities, right? But good almost 30 years later, right? 1997, a subcommittee of the Board of Deans, so there's 17 schools at that time at the University of Washington, School of Medicine, School of Law, School of Pharmacy, College of Arts and Sciences, College of Education, professional schools, as well as the chancellors of the campuses in Tacoma and the campus in Bothell. A subcommittee put together a report by then Dean of the School of Business, William Bradford. It's called the Bradford Report. And among the things in that report was an emphasis on trying to increase diversity on the faculty. And that report said that if the University of Washington was serious about this, it had to hire a senior administrator who would have this as his or her primary responsibility. In good university fashion, this is 1997 for this report, 10 years later, the position I have was established. So roughly 40 years after those students are, and I'm using this as an example to show you how new this is, and how challenging this is, and how important it is that we push ourselves to think as creatively and positively and, most importantly, strategically. Think more strategically than we ever have before, because this is a new opportunity and a unique opportunity that we're going to have. Well, in doing that work and coming to this position in 2007, there was no model for me to use other than perhaps at other institutions. There was no administrative infrastructure that existed. I had to try to develop that on my own. There was no set pattern of relationships that one could build upon. I was going to have to do that on my own. And so it was a magnificent challenge to try to figure out how you could have an impact at this institution. And in a fascinating way, the primary strategy that I decided to pursue, that if I've built this up enough, you're still listening and want to know about. I have an awkward sense of humor at times, so feel free to laugh. Most of the time when I'm lecturing to my students, they don't laugh, so that's okay. I tell them when to laugh, and then once in a while they do. In a fascinating way, the primary strategy that I think I've been able to pursue and that I think has been, to a degree, quite successful is directly related to what you're doing here in this time together. That is, it has to be grounded in understandings of research. It has to be grounded in traditional understandings of what the institution understands itself to do. So, there are two fundamental principles that I think guide my work that help us understand the importance of research in understanding how to build a more inclusive faculty. The first one is inclusion is indispensable to excellence. Here I'm taking from a comment that I saw on a poster that the president of New York University had as a statement where it said diversity is indispensable to excellence at New York University, at NYU. And I said, no, it's not diversity, it's inclusion. Inclusion means not just having people who come from different backgrounds, but building a set of institutional relationships where these individuals can be successful and can maximize their performance. It's the difference between a sense of descriptive diversity and, in fact, working to transform institutions so that they can take full advantage of the diversity that is there and build a better institution than it might otherwise be. Expanding organizational capacity and placing inclusion central to the mission of the institution simply means that academic excellence is not attained unless you have a more inclusive faculty and more inclusive institution generally. It is a way of understanding the mission of institutions of higher education that says they are failures. They are failures if they do not successfully commit and successfully achieve building a more inclusive institution, because the central mission of these institutions is the promotion and dissemination of knowledge. And you can't build knowledge, you can't teach the knowledge that you have unless you have individuals there who have a commitment to broaden the research agendas that currently exist, to be able to bring new work to the institution, to all members of the institution, new work that helps it better understand communities that have not historically been the focus of its attention. I like to use the term underserved, underrepresented, and understudied communities. All of our intellectual work at institutions of higher education is better, whatever your focus of attention, if you have colleagues next to you, valued colleagues in your department who have as part of their research agendas deepening and broadening our understanding of historically underrepresented, underserved, and understudied communities. Don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that everybody has to do work of this sort. I'm not suggesting that every faculty member or researcher or administrator of color, if you'll permit me to use that term, has to do this sort of work. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the institution has to have individuals there who do this work, who are able to broaden the intellectual agenda of the institution if it in fact is going to be an institution that speaks to the communities we're responsible to. Who are those communities? Well, all of us. All of our communities, and especially those that are historically underrepresented. What I'm trying to do here clearly is to place inclusion as central to the mission of the institution. There's another principle that I use. Innovation is necessary for progress. What we've done in the past has not been sufficient. I don't have the time here today to show you the data, but the data are that this is hard work. And if we're going to use research as a foundation for building a more inclusive faculty, it's doubly hard work. because of the intersection of research with patterns of research funding, because of the intersection of research with traditional areas of defined excellence, it's doubly difficult, which means innovation is even doubly important, is even more important than ever before. Past insights that we have are limited. We need to innovate in a different way. You see how these two are related to one another? Understanding inclusion as indispensable to excellence provides the value foundation for developing the new practices of innovation. You have to think strategically for the institution to be able to embrace this new vision of inclusion as a way of understanding its own sense of excellence. Well, how do we try to do that? Very, very briefly, how do I try to do that? Well, there are a number of ways that we can think of this, and I want to end my time focusing here on the research and teaching component, but there are a number of important dimensions that I think I've learned. How much time do I have? 7 minutes. Okay, great. 7 minutes. Perfect. A number of dimensions that I've pursued in trying to pursue this work. One is you have to build expectations of stakeholders and leaders at the institution. If you'll permit me, I'll do it anyway, but that's part of my humor and joke. When people ask me what my job is, I say, depending on the audience, I'll use it here in this audience, I empower white men. People look at me and say, what? That's not your job. You're supposed to be empowering, faculty, and you're supposed to be working with faculty. And I said, no, you don't understand how this works. It's very important that this work be grounded in raising expectations of key gatekeepers and stakeholders at the institution. And you have to, in fact, understand that in my role, and soon Leo's role, that in our role here at the University of Washington, we have as a primary responsibility helping people be better than they already are, helping them grow. We have to be, in a sense, good teachers. We have to be individuals who allow them to understand that they have the capacity to overcome their sense of disempowerment. How many times have we heard? Well, there just aren't very many qualified ones out there. Well, in the pool, they just didn't quite rise to the top. Well, we tried to hire one 5 years ago, and she decided to have a child and couldn't keep up the workload necessary to maintain the R1 grants to be able to pursue it. And we're not sure that the lovely word, three letters, fit was quite right in the department. All of that as real, and those are very real challenges. Don't get me wrong, I understand. These are very real challenges, but all of those are challenges that remove responsibility and remove commitment from those key decision makers and stakeholders to make progress in this area. If you will, individuals like deans and department chairs and division heads who take those positions because of the power that they provide them to be able to build according to whatever vision they have for their department or their department or division or program, because of that, are very comfortable defining themselves in this area of building a more inclusive faculty as powerless. I can't do anything about it. It's beyond my control. It's the demographics. In engineering, it's how we teach math. In elementary and high school, right? There are ways, well, that strategy has to be overcome. You have to raise the expectations, overcome that disempowerment, and overcome particularly the propensity of individuals to be risk averse. And the way you help them overcome their risk aversion is to simply say, and this is based upon actual experience, my vision, my understanding of departments and programs and divisions that have made progress in this area, you only make progress the third time around. You need 2 failures to learn from. And what those failures give you, here we are in a health policy research arena, right? What those failures give you is the evidence that you need to make you smart, to help you better strategize. You're not guaranteeing success, but you're increasing the probability of success. So you have to, if you're risk averse, you're never going to allow yourself to learn to be able to make progress in that area, raising expectations. But doing it on the basis of lived reality, but allowing for failure to be able to learn from it the idea from political science of positive constraints, to be able to learn from it in order to make progress. I better go more quickly. A second very important component is climate. You have to enrich the work environment in which these individuals do their research, in which these individuals do their teaching. There's an institutional, a departmental component, climate surveys, focus groups, continuous reassessment is absolutely clear. It's not just a question of opening the door and letting someone in. You have to understand what it means to help that person be successful. They may need special mentoring. They may need more strategic support at particularly critical moments in their career or in the development of their research projects. Mentorship is absolutely key. You empower faculty to make more informed choices. You can see the key to this happening, right? You have to be able to allow individuals and groups to understand exactly, in full transparency, how this system works. How do you get the grants? How do you get tenure? What's the strategy for promotion from within? Who are the key decision makers and leaders? You have to make that completely transparent so that people can be in control of their own destinies. And at least they're able then to make strategic decisions as to how to proceed. But all of this is based upon a foundation of research at a research-intensive institution like this one and many other research-intensive institutions. You see the intersection then of building a capacity to promote Latino-focused research and building then, and thank you, 2 minutes left, an inclusive faculty, and building then a greater capability for the institution to be able to do what it says it always wants to do and has done successfully, the promotion and dissemination of knowledge. Well, what are some of the interesting innovations that we've tried here at the University of Washington? Well, one of the things we did was to develop a diversity blueprint where a very significant component of that diversity blueprint that we offer as a template for all departments and programs here is to focus on enhancing the range of research that is occurring as a way of supporting faculty who commit themselves to that research. And a fundamental premise of this diversity blueprint is that high-level administrators, program chairs, department chairs, division heads have just as much responsibility for making progress in this area as those of us who may be more directly involved in trying to build a more inclusive faculty. You share and distribute that responsibility. So accountability becomes, holding those individuals accountable becomes a critical component of this work. Another thing that we did, you don't have to read this, it's a little difficult. We worked, last comment I'll make, we worked for a year and a half to add language to the faculty code. Any of you know what the faculty code is here at the university? It's kind of the Bible of, I shouldn't use that on Good Friday, but it's as a practicing Catholic, maybe I should do that on Good Friday. I didn't, anyway, there was no bacon apparently at the breakfast table. You're not supposed to eat meat if you're a Catholic, but anyway, today on Good Friday. We worked for a year and a half to get language added to the faculty code, which refers, that section of the faculty code that refers to appointment and promotion of faculty members. We worked for a year and a half to have language added that recognized excellence attained in research, teaching, and service, associated with, for the research component, diversity and equal opportunity, and all other aspects of scholarship, research, teaching, and service that address diversity, excellence, equity, equal opportunity as part of the criteria that would be used to assess whether or not faculty could be appointed, whether or not they could be promoted, and whether or not they could be given tenure. What we did was to add language to the guidelines as to what excellence really is. Because we can talk about excellence and inclusion all we want, but what's the bottom line? Well, how are people assessed? And you need language in the formal document of assessment that validates this. And when I decided that I wanted to pursue this, everyone advised me against it. They said, you're not going to get changes to the faculty code. Here you're talking about merit, and you're trying to expand the definition of merit. The faculty is never going to go for this. In order to get this change, I know I'm going over my time, but I'll do it anyway. We started 5 minutes late. Actually, we didn't, but we had to get the approval of two councils of the Faculty Senate, the Faculty Council for Multicultural Affairs and the Faculty Council for Faculty Affairs. We had to get the approval of the Executive Committee of the Faculty Senate. We got to get the approval of the Faculty Senate. It then had to go to a vote of the entire 4,000 plus members of the faculty at the University of Washington. You had to get majority support. People said that's never going to happen. Or, in good political science fashion as a political scientist, you had to get a 2/3 majority of those who voted. So the requirement to get any language changed in the faculty code of this fashion is called Class A legislation, the most high-level legislation that can occur. You have to get a 2/3 supermajority of those who actually vote. Said, not going to happen. I said, you don't understand how this works. Said, if we lose at any point in the process with any one of those councils, any one of those committees, or in the overall faculty vote, it sends an unambiguous signal to the administration that if progress is going to be made in this area, it has to be on the basis of administrative leadership because the faculty are not ready to do it. And they said, well, what if you win the vote? And I said, if we win the vote, guess what? The message is exactly the same. It says that the faculty are ready to be led. And they're waiting for high-level administrators, those deans, department chairs, those people who I said you need to raise the expectations of. They are ready to be led, and it's up to them to lead the faculty to move forward. And they said, well, what do you structured a win-win situation? And I said, yes, I'm a political scientist. That's what we do, if we know our work well. So we went through the Faculty Council for Multicultural Affairs, and there's several members of that council here in this room, and it got unanimous support. This was a good thing to do, have this language added. We went to the Faculty Council for Faculty Affairs, and there was a unanimous objection, unanimous, to adding any language like this. Had to then go to the Executive Committee of the Faculty Senate, where a reconciliation committee was put together. Being a political scientist, I know what to do there. You had to stack the committee. So I made sure that there were people on that committee who were very strong, firm, clear, and convincing, right, on this issue. Came out with a recommendation, went to the Executive Council of the Faculty Senate. They approved it. Went to the Faculty Senate. You saw the generational divide. It's fascinating. Generational divide. Not a racial divide, not a gender divide, a generational divide. If you'll permit me, older faculty, more senior faculty, let us assume more accomplished faculty, were on one side of this issue and said, no changes. This is privileging race and ethnicity. We know what's going on. This is privileging race and ethnicity in an inappropriate way. All the other faculty, across races, across genders, across sexualities, younger faculty, I'll say roughly mid-40s and below, I'm guessing here based upon how people look. I know it all depends, varies, right? As a good social scientist, I have to acknowledge my limitations, right? And they all supported it. So it won majority vote, goes to the entire faculty for a vote, 1,400 voted. More than had voted on any other piece of Class A legislation in recent times, and it won by 77.6% of the vote. So what was the message? What was the message? The message was the faculty are there and ready to be led, which fits consistently with the characterization that I provided. If the institution understands itself, and now with the evidence where its faculty are, understands itself as it should, contributing to excellence along all those dimensions that I just suggested, including these dimensions of research, teaching, and service, the institution is going to be able to grow. All of that is grounded on greater research. All of that is grounded on, at a research intensive institution like ours, having faculty there who are committed to improving and expanding and deepening our knowledge of all communities, but especially those that are historically underrepresented, underserved, and understudied. And that's what our Latino communities are. And that's why work like you're doing here and work in subsequent research institutes and focusing on grants is absolutely critical to the institution, whatever its own understanding of itself, actually living up to its originally stated ideals. That's hard work. It's fun when you win. Don't always win. I'm telling you the positive stories here, right? It's hard work. It's fun. It's absolutely necessary. If we're going to be able to build an institution that we're all proud of as a public institution, an institution that has a responsibility to all of the taxpayers of the state, to all of the communities of the state. As an institution of higher education, it has a responsibility to all communities in the world who want to be able to access the tremendous resources that are here and who can learn from the research that we produce. What's the limit to our achieving that? Go back to those first principles. Just the limit that we impose on ourselves. And my hope is that fewer of us will impose any limits on ourselves whatsoever, and will continue to have high expectations of what we can do, but of what those in positions of power and influence can do. Well, thank you very much.
I'm going to do a couple minutes of Q&A.
So we have a few minutes for questions, if any, or comments. I was just having a conversation out in the hallway about the fact that we have such a need for a diverse workforce, and this talk directly addresses that issue. This is your chance.
Tried to time it right so that there wouldn't be any time for questions. But I missed it. This one over here.
Good morning. I mean, you can probably hear me. Monica from Biostatistics at the UW. How do you hold these high-level administrators, payers, how do you hold them accountable? How do you, especially when you try to have the diversity and inclusion conversation and they get defensive?
It's not easy. Universities are very interesting institutions in that power is widely dispersed and concentrated and hierarchically structured at the same time. So that is, a decision to hire a particular faculty member is devolved to a department, and there are committees, right, and there's majority votes, right, and so the dean isn't directly involved in that, the president and the provost are not directly involved in that, the division head, the department chair is not necessarily directly involved in that, right? But that devolution of power exists within a reality where everybody's looking for cues from higher level administrators, and that's where the accountability comes in. There's no enhanced accountability unless the president holds the provost accountable, the provost holds the deans accountable. The provost, my friend, hates me saying this. The provost holds the deans accountable, and the deans hold department chairs accountable. Because who appoints the faculty committees to hire or to review hiring in a particular area? Usually it's a department chair. So you see how that process gets very clearly outlined, and if the signals are not clear that this is important, the discussions don't occur. Now, how does an individual faculty member in a department, when the department seems reluctant to do this, what does the individual faculty member do? You come to my office, and we have a conversation, and we try to develop a strategy where you do something like invite me to come talk to the department. And you hear a conversation like this, and I'm not saying that just to stroke my own ego. I've seen and had comments made to me continuously of the benefit of having a high-level administrator come in and talk about why this is important. And it opens up a space for people to voice their concerns. As an example, at the School of Medicine retreat a couple of years ago, we had a discussion when the diversity plan for the School of Medicine was being developed at the retreat with all of the division heads and chiefs and so forth. And I was with a group of about 10 division heads. And the first question I got was, how can we even talk about this? Because of Initiative 200. I-200. It prevents us from even talking about these issues. You're bringing race and ethnicity and gender and diversity and different sexuality into account, and we can't do that because of the law. And I said, that's actually not true. And they said, oh, absolutely it is. And I said, well, the Attorney General says differently. And they said, what? And I said, well, you know, when we proposed this legislation, the first thing I did before I talked to anyone was to send it to the Attorney General's office and say, give me your legal opinion. Can you defend this in court? And they said, yes, we can. So I told that story, and they said, well, I guess we can talk about this, huh? So it's an education process but it's one where you need a strategy of intervention that has the same characteristics that I just described. A clear sense of the hierarchy of authority and power at the institution, sending different signals than the ones that people already receive, and a process of educating the faculty at the ground level, for those who don't understand it, as to what's actually possible and how this can actually work. That's one of the things that my office tries to do as well. Yes?
Maybe it's the same question, or it's a slightly different question. Marco Zuniga, by the way. I'm turning to an attorney, and so I look at these rules, and I think there's got to be enforcement entity, blah, blah, blah. And what are the consequences if you don't follow that? So can you respond to that?
Sure.
Maybe it's the same answer.
Absolutely right. So what this language does is to allow faculty who want to have work of this sort counted towards their, as an example, tenure packages, it has to be counted. So you point to that in your outline of your research statement, that this is consistent with paragraph, section 2432, paragraph B, and you quote it, and you say, this is the work I've done in that area. Look, this is the work that I've done that is consistent with what the university said. For a department who wants to make a claim to the dean that they want to hire in a particular area, you say, well, look, this is the department now, saying to a dean, look, the university says it's going to value this. We don't have anyone who does work in this area. We want to make a claim for that. Now, this isn't applied to everyone. It's just those who have this as part of their work focus, right? So it's not an imposition on the entire faculty, but it's a validation of those of us who choose to work in that particular area. So that's the way that it works, right? I came to this idea by talking with folks at the University of California at Berkeley, where they had done this since 2005. And I thought, well, California is a state that also is an anti-affirmative action state. How did they get around it? So we worked out the language, and the way we got around it was very simple. This has nothing to do with what the person's background is. It's about their work. So whatever your race, ethnicity, national origin, or whatever, if you commit yourself to this work, the institution says it's going to validate the work. It's not inconsistent with not taking race, ethnicity, this is about the work. And the second thing was, it said, is this going to be imposed on everybody? It says, no. If that's part of the excellence you've attained, then you can have it counted. But it's not imposed on everyone. So the lawyer said in a 10-page single-space memo, because this doesn't refer to the individual's background, and because it's not imposed on, it's completely legally justifiable. There's no case law in either federal law or state law that would lead us to suspect that we would not be able to defend this in court. It was only after I got that legal opinion that I then said, okay, let's see if we can do this. Because I knew what the reaction was going to be from some of my colleagues, some of my senior administrators. Oh, no, we can't do this because of the law. And I said, well, look, here's a 10-page single-space memo from our legal counsel who says it's absolutely fine. So that's the way in which you can try it.
I would like to make a comment about this. We have people here from federal agencies, and the one reality about the medical school and the health sciences more generally, I think, is they're exquisitely sensitive to messaging from the federal agencies that fund much of the research that occurs at the University of Washington. And so, providing the messages from those agencies to the researchers and faculty and deans is very, very, very important because they're responsive. And I can tell you in conversations I've had, they're listening and understanding that they need to be more inclusive. The medical school is going through a process right now of review because there hasn't been enough of an environment of inclusiveness there. So those are very important messages to send at all levels. It's just a comment. One other question or comment for Luis before?
I just want to ask a quick question because this is something that is done at university level. But what happened in the actual workforce government, like the state of Washington government? Because I have not seen that remarkable with the agency that I'm working. So how he could be not only keeping with the University of Washington, but to extrapolate to the government agency. Because I really be disappointed over here that I was working with the state of Washington. And then the law has been to protect us, but it now turned out to be the law sometimes is really working against us.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
It seems to me somebody has to have a conversation with the governor. And I know one of his senior staffers, so we might engage in that conversation. But for those of you who, I've given talks related to the way this work is pursued here at the University of Washington, at the city government of Seattle, King County government, a number of universities around the country. If you think a conversation would be helpful, I see the University of Washington as a state agency. And if there's a way for us to share some experiences that you think might be beneficial to your specific agency or to a group of agencies, I think we have an obligation to try to share what our experiences are so that people can then adapt it appropriately to their own work environments and see how it might develop there. So very happy to do that.
Catherine, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Catherine Newton. I'm wondering if, in response to having done this work, what's changed, or has it been a lever that you can use?
Yeah.
Is it?
Sure. So the year after the faculty voted on this in June of 2012, in the fall, the Faculty Senate passed a resolution of a sense of the Faculty Senate asking that all departments and divisions within the university take time in the course of the academic year to talk specifically about what they were doing to build a more inclusive faculty. So it had that ripple effect. The provost gave my office $300,000 a year as an annual commitment to supplement the offers made to hire faculty across our 3 campuses. It's not a lot of money, $300,000, but it's something. It's the signaling. It's the messaging and some money. Now, $300,000 is, pennies in areas of health research, right? But in many parts of the university, if it helps add an additional month of salary or helps support the research startup package of a particular faculty member. So now that's coming from the provost. I report directly to the provost and to the vice provost of the Office for Minority Affairs. But in coming from the provost, right, the provost is the person I work with most closely, it sent a clear signal to the deans that they needed to look at this. I've been working very hard to try to get our provost to hold the deans accountable on this issue. And I'm using this as my basis for doing it. Now, deans are very complex creatures. Should all be laughing at this point, right? They have a lot of responsibilities. Complex, competing, at times incompatible responsibilities, ultimate authority over the bottom line, balancing the budget, all sorts of demands made on deans, right? But they're key to making any progress in this area. Until our system holds the deans directly accountable, and the deans can't accept that accountability unless they are simultaneously holding their department chairs and divisions heads accountable. And those division heads and department heads can't be held accountable unless they're holding their faculty accountable. You see the ripple effect. So if we can get more clear patterns, not just policies, but patterns of practice that are holding high-level administrators accountable, I think we're going to see more progress. We've been able to do that. One of the things we've been able to do, very quickly, is we're in a budget crisis. We weren't able to hire as many faculty as we could, but more faculty hires think about this issue. I'm very confident in saying than ever before. I think it's in part because of this work. What I can tell you for sure is our tenuring rate of faculty who do this work has shot up dramatically. That's a key accomplishment, not of my office. It's a key accomplishment of the institution in embracing the logic that helps it actually do better work, if not actually be more competitive in receiving federal grants. It's a win-win. Remember what I said about win-win situations? It's a win-win situation. My hope is that if we continue the work, we'll continue to make progress. Thank you, everyone.